What up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the FilmBros podcast. I'm your host, JP. This is my co-host, Josh.
Hey, everyone.
What up, guys? And we back to bring you guys another review. And can I say I am super excited. We are coming together. Everything is coming together right now.
Yeah, it's all coming together.
We got new equipment. We got new things happening. Hopefully the quality is 10 times better. We're always here to improve and keep moving forward, and that's what we're going to be doing from here on out. So little tidbit, same thing, this pod or at least this episode will be a podcast exclusive. We are still waiting on a couple pieces of equipment, and it's going to help us with our YouTube gig, editing, stuff like that. So with that being said, Josh, go ahead and let them know where they can listen to us on our podcast or listen to our podcast, etc., etc.
Well, if you want to hit us up at any time, we're on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at FilmBros Podcast. If you want to listen to our other episodes while you're doing whatever, Spotify and Apple Podcasts at FilmBros Podcast. And if you want to support us in a big way while getting our full catalog, Zippy Stream. All it takes is a name and email at FilmBros Podcast. You put your name in, you get the email, you get our full catalog, like I said, and then you can email us, and you get updates on when new episodes drop. And even you can contact us and give us updates on news you want us to cover, movies to cover. So yeah, at FilmBros Podcast. Oh, and can't forget our YouTube. While this one may just be a podcast, our YouTube is at FilmBros Podcast. You can go check out our other good episodes. See our faces for a moment.
Yeah, and before we get started into this review, let's go ahead and hear a word from our sponsor. Today's episode is sponsored by Zippy Stream. If you are wondering how we make money to run our podcast, it's all because of this innovative platform. Here at FilmBros Podcast, we absolutely love using Zippy Stream. It's the easiest way to convert listeners into an email list, but best of all, they find us sponsorship so we can keep making money doing what we love.
Suppose you're also a podcaster thinking about starting one. Zippy Stream will help you find and manage a relationship with brands that are relevant to your audience. If you want to learn more, contact us as soon as possible. Everyone that signs up this month will get to claim £10 as a joining bonus, which is around $12 or something like that.
Just reach out to us by email or social media DMs, and I'll put you in touch with the guys at Zippy Stream right away. Now back to the pod. All right, guys, and that was our sponsor, Zippy Stream. So if you guys are interested in supporting us in a big way, Zippy Stream, our links are in our TikTok and our Twitter. All it takes is an email and a name, and you help us out in a big way.
Yeah.
With that being said, let's go on with the review. And the review today that we're going to be doing with the dawn of a new DC age, we kind of want to look back at the old DCEU, to see if this is a correct thing to have been doing or is this a bad thing. And we're going to start with the one that kicked it all off from the jump back in 2013, Man of Steel.
You will give the people of Earth an ideal to strive towards. They will race behind you. They will stumble. They will fall. But in time, they will join you in the sun, Cal. In time, you will help them accomplish wonders.
Starring Henry Cavill. We got what's her name? Amy Adams, Michael Shannon, Diane Lane, Russell Crowe. We had a stacked cast, Rotten Tomatoes score of a 56%, audience score 75%. Kind of a little weird disconnect, for a movie that apparently a lot of people hated. Not sure. IMDb gave it a 7.1 out of 10. That's interesting. The disconnect, directed by our very own Papi Zack Snyder. This movie is an interesting one. It's interesting because this movie was supposed to be a dark edgy answer to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This was supposed to be their counter attack to how Marvel was just doing spectacular, tremendous, amazing, and they really wanted to make it something great. And so they tried to give it this darker, edgier tone, and apparently didn't sit right with a lot of people. A lot of people wanted a fun, happy, go lucky, another franchise that is just super bright and colorful and just full of all this and that. But there was a vision in mind, and if you guys didn't know the vision, Zack had this arc that was supposed to happen because it was basically him and Hamada who needed to build out this universe to bring money in, and for reasons unknown, they couldn't be patient. Apparently money wasn't coming in the way they wanted, and here we are going to be heading into a new DCU. But that's for another time. Josh, go ahead and let them know what your thoughts are, your initial thoughts for The Man of Steel.
Right out the gate, man, my initial thoughts are just, this movie is great. Personally, it's a comfort movie. It makes like it for me. This is what I imagine Superman is like. Granted, I do have like, it's my first favorite Superman movie, and then the other ones fall in line behind it. But I just really like this one. There's nothing much that I can say without deep diving into it. But I mean, my first thoughts are just that it's good. If you haven't seen it, I think you're kind of missing out. But that's just me.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's different because you grew up with this one, right? This was like your Superman.
Yeah.
Like, because I grew up with Brandon Routh, Superman Returns, and I grew up with Christopher Reeves and all them. Superman Returns was pretty good for me when I watched it, but when I seen this movie in theaters when it first came out, this movie was spectacular. You ain't never seen Superman do what he did, besides in this movie. The thing about this one is that it was supposed to be modernized, right?
Yeah.
It was supposed to be brought into the future. The last time we seen Superman, or quote unquote a good Superman movie, was, I believe, the Donner cut of Superman 2 that came out in like 1980 something.
Oh man, long time ago.
So they were trying to bring back Superman in the form of Brandon Routh with Superman Returns, which was supposed to be a Christopher Reeves knockoff.
Yeah.
But then wound up landing and said, you know what, this isn't what we're going for. We can't have this old fashioned. We need something modern. That's why they came up with this one. Took the trunks away.
Yep.
Took the trunks away. Made it a sleek suit.
Yes.
So let's dive a little bit deeper, okay? Let's ask the questions. What was the things that you liked about this movie the most?
Other than the obvious points, which are the action, which I'm pretty sure we'll come back to, no doubt. But I mean, I like the story. I like where they put Clark. People want to be like, oh, he's sad and depressed and stuff, but not really. I mean, this Clark was trying to find himself. You know what I mean? For the most part, him going around saving people without a cape. He was basically doing everything just without a suit, and he wanted to remain a mystery. And the only reason he wanted to remain a mystery was because his dad, Paul Kent, he was the one that was teaching him that the world wasn't ready for someone like him, and that when he does expose himself, the world will take it however, and then that leads into BBS and whatnot. But yeah, I like the story, like the characters. I really like the chemistry between Henry Cavill and is it Amy Adams that plays Lois Lane? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like they do really well. The bad guys, General Zod, Faora. I think the one that Superman sends through a train is Namek, something like that.
Namek, okay.
So, like they have this presence about them where they're like, look, all we really want is we are following General Zod because he knows best. He's our commanding officer, and General Zod is probably one of the best live action comic book villains ever. That's just my opinion, but out of all the movies and from MCU and DC, he has to take the top. I can make the argument that he's better than Thanos and stuff like that, but that's too far. If I'm being for real, but yeah, General Zod is just a really great villain, and I'm sure we'll touch up on that again.
I think he's a great villain. I think Michael Shannon really put his all into this movie, and to play that what's that word? Maniacal character. There you go. To play that character, like, he has those chops, and and nobody knows out there, he will be making a reappearance in The Flash. Yeah, because they're gonna try to save him from getting his neck snapped, obviously. So they, Michael Shannon was a great part of this movie. Him and what's her name, Feora. They were great villains for this movie. I couldn't have asked for a better kickoff to the DCEU than Michael Shannon's General Zod, right? Yeah. I think what I love the most about this movie is that it was what I was saying earlier, is that counterbalance from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think at the time when I seen this movie, I think we're barely on the second phase of the MCU when this movie came out. I believe that we were like getting to Iron Man 2 and Thor: The Dark World, and you seen what kind of what Marvel was doing over there, and so to sit down in a movie theater and watch this movie and be like, there's actual stakes, like, it doesn't feel like it's just quirky comment from Tony Stark, and then Jericho missile bombs behind him, gets kidnapped, gets rescued, stuff like that. You had somebody who had all the power in the world. Ooh, kiss the mic. Had all the power in the world, and was trying to figure out what's his purpose in life. Where does he take that? Like, where do you take unlimited power, and where do you dump it? Do you use it for your people, for people that you know about and found out that they're your heritage, or do you save people, the weaker man, the one that's down on the ground, that can get kicked? Do you go for the bully, or do you that conflict within himself? It wasn't just, though the action was great, and though I love the action in this movie, it wasn't just him fighting other people. It was fighting within himself to be the best Superman that he could be. And that's why I told you, like, there was a whole arc that was supposed to happen with this movie, and it was supposed to take it far and make Superman that happy Christopher Reeve's Superman. But I think that he needed this movie to do that struggle. And we will be doing more reviews of the movies coming up, so I'll try not to jump the gun on this one and say how the arc kind of gets to that point. Yeah. But with Man of Steel, I have to say the conflict that they presented to us was a great conflict, and pairing Henry Cavill opposite of Michael Shannon, that movie created wonders.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about, because back to Michael Shannon, like, he's gonna get a lot of praise. He's one of the highlights. He's right out the gate. When we're introduced to him on Krypton, we established that his method of saving his people is all he cares about. He wants to save his people. It's the reason he killed Jor-El. They just couldn't see eye to eye. As for when after everything's said and done, and Clark and Kal-El is sent to Earth, and he's like, that he has a whole menacing scene where he's like, I will find your son and kill him, or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That is a promise being made by someone who at the time didn't know that he was probably a dead man. You know what I mean? Because think about it. They could have totally not. They could have stayed in the Phantom Zone, and but it's because that world engine brought him back and stuff. But that's all luck. That's luck. Krypton blew up. They were fortunate enough to find the world engine,
Mm.
And so it all came together for him.
Yeah.
And he was a real dedicated villain, cuz it's not till he loses the ship and his crew towards the end of the film where he's like, "You know what? It's not about my people no more. Since you want to protect this planet, I'm going to be the menace." So he was going at it. They fighting. We don't have to talk about the big piece that everyone finds so controversial. Superman snapping Zod's neck. For me, you did say it. It is a more realistic take on Superman. To me, it's the only way that I saw it going. There's no other way. Zod said he wasn't going to stop. People want to be like, oh, he could have held him or whatever, this and that, flew him away. And I'm like, well, that doesn't... If it wasn't this family, it was going to be another one. You know what I mean? Snapping his neck was the only viable option. And, you know, if you don't think so, then okay. But at that point, you know, that story leads elsewhere. But, you know, that's just a whole thing. People want to make one of the more controversial parts of the film is that. Same with like Pac Kent's death. You know?
Okay. Well, we'll hit up the controversial ones a little bit later because that's actually going to be a deep dive conversation. But let's get back to how the characters develop. Do we feel like there's a good character development in this movie? I personally think so. I think Henry Cavill, Michael Shannon, Superman, Michael Shannon. I think everybody gets their time to shine. You know, Michael Shannon went, like how you said, it went from somebody who just wants to do his job, save his people, save his world, to getting almost there twice, losing, and just lost everything. So what happens? He turns into a madman who just, you know, scorched earth, or just wants to see the world burn because if you ruin my life, I'm gonna ruin your life, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Henry Cavill's Superman, he started off as somebody who was unsure of himself, and by the end of the movie was completely sure of him. Even when he was going up against his badass fighter, who he knew what he was outgunned, outmatched, still sat up and said, "Hey, you know what? I'm Superman. This is what I'm here to do." That controversial scene will obviously, like I said, we'll talk about that and we'll deep dive a little bit more. The next thing I kind of wanted to touch up on was the cinematography in this movie.
Oh man!
And a lot of people say like it's out of tone, you know, stuff like that. But the color, like they say, is desaturated, but the color's there. When it needs to be bright, it's bright. When you need to see certain things, like, yeah, there's a couple desaturated things that you wish, you know, could have had a little bit more. But Zack Snyder has a certain touch where, like, it'll be gloomy, but then right there's that little crack where it shows all that beautifulness and shines a beautiful light towards everything. One of the scenes that really showcase that is Superman's first flight. That's honestly, if there's one thing that I believe anybody can universally agree on, is Superman's first flight is one of the highlights of this movie.
Oh man, it's so good.
It's amazing. The CGI, everything is amazing, and I love how they showcase. That's one detail that I loved, is that Zack Snyder showcased that Superman isn't just flying; he's manipulating the Earth's atmosphere to lift him up. You know, so when he puts his fist down and those rocks are coming up and, you know, floating around him, he's manipulating it so he can fly. And I think that shows an abundance of detail. Not only that, but like detail to, like, you know, his suit, the symbol that was on his suit, you know, down to the credits, you know, like the credits had Kryptonian symbols all over the place. The details in this movie, the cinematography, everything that, like, you can tell everything was purposefully done and detailed to perfection.
A lot of the cinematography is really great. You're right. There's a lot of things in this movie where, like, sure, you can see it as dark and gloomy, but once he wants this one thing to shine bright, it shines. You know, like another scene, not just first flight, but the scene right after they pretty much escape the the ship, and he's like, his dad is like hit that panel, you know what I mean? And then the like it cracks, and you can see the sun and the bit of the earth, and Lois's pod like spiral out of control.
Yeah.
That whole scene is brightly lit. It looks great. Like there's no way that people find this movie dull and dark. You know what I mean? It's so weird. Because it shines brightly when it needs to.
Yeah.
You know, you don't expect every Marvel movie to, shine brightly. You know.
Well, that's the thing, is that when Marvel decided to go down the route and say, hey, not everything is bright, with i.e. Eternals and stuff like that, it did bad. So this whole desaturated thing and this whole tone that Zack kind of carried, because he does this in all of his movies, and to see it carried into like Man of Steel and all that, it shows that that's his signature, right? And you can tell like this whole movie has his signature all over it, and it's fun to look back and just look at this movie and just get all those little details and be like, oh, look at that, look at this, look at that. What is your, like, how do I put it? If you can nitpick one character that didn't do right by you in this movie, who can you pick?
Nitpick. I'm not too sure, because like that's the thing. Like I understand most of everything that goes on. Like,
but like there wasn't one character that you saw in this movie that you were like, why him? Why did they pick him? Why did Zack pick him specifically? One for me, and I'll let you think about it.
Yeah.
One for me is Perry White. Lawrence Fishburne is Perry White.
Oh, okay.
And like, I liked his portrayal, and I understand what he was trying to do. Zack was trying to do with him, but Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White didn't really sit well with me. Now, I'm not saying he's a bad actor, and I'm not saying that he didn't do a good enough job in the movie to help me overlook it. But I do wish that we would have had a little bit more of a editor who, got on people's backs. And because to be honest, when I saw Perry, I was like, this guy, he's mean, but he's not mean enough. You know what I mean? And Perry is supposed to be one of those, hey, newspaper on my desk type shit or whatever. And like, he showcases it a lot, but then he shows that little soft side, and you're just like, well, that's not who I'm used to. You know what I mean? I wish they would have had him a little bit more firm, that like we're used to seeing, at least in different mediums.
I mean, I guess I can see what you mean with him, but like, I think he was more like that. Like, you see it in scenes where, like, with Lois, when he's like 2 weeks no pay, you're on leave or whatever, and she's just like, okay, and then he's like, nah, let's make it 3 since you want to agree. You know what I mean? So, like, I get what you're saying, but at the same time, I think he does meet that fine line. And then obviously when the world is like,
but when, what happens after he says, let's make it 3? What happens after that?
He's like, he's like, whatever reason you had for dropping it, I thank you for dropping it, or something like that, right?
Exactly. So he went back to being nice, that nice guy, that buddy. And I'm like, yeah, they work with each other, but he's all about his paper. He wants his money. Take your ass home and don't come back until we're done. You know what I mean? I think a good way to showcase that friendliness is not through words, but actions with Perry, if that makes sense. Because in Superman Returns and then the original Superman, like, he was a hard ass. Perry White was a hard ass, but he'd show that he cared through his facial expressions and like how he moved and stuff. Like, he never really needed to say it, because they knew regardless, like, yeah, tough exterior, but on the inside you could see that it's different. And I think Lawrence Fishburne showed it outside, and I think that that's something that kind of took me out, because I'm like, how are you going to be a hard ass to her and say all these things but then backtrack it with a nice thing at the very end? You know what I mean? Like, you should stand firm. Now, if it was like one-on-one outside, like if he would have caught her in the bar when she was gonna leak the newsletter that she wanted to leak or something. Wait, is that this movie?
Yeah, when she's talking to what's his name, and she's like, "Oh, I want you to leak the story."
Yeah. So if he would have showed up there and had that heart to heart there outside of the work, that'd have been different for me, you know. But like every scene that we see him in is at the office. Him trying to do a business and everything, and it just seems like it. I think that would be my little nitpick. That there's Lawrence Fishburne in the movie. Just his portrayal of Perry.
Maybe. I think I get what you're saying. I can see what you're saying, but I don't know if I agree completely. So, you know, I get what you're saying.
Whatever, dog. But with that, what would be a nitpick for you if you can think of one?
Okay, if I had to think of one, looking throughout everyone in that whole movie, I want to say maybe, who plays Jonathan Kent? What's his name?
Oh, let me find him real quick. Not him. Kevin Costner.
Okay, yeah. I guess Kevin Costner and the mom as well. I was expecting older people, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah.
Because
that's something for me too. I think his mother.
Yeah, like I was expecting a bit older people, but I mean, it depends on the timeline of like when they meet him and stuff like that.
It reminds me that you bringing it up. It kind of reminds me of how like what they did with Spider-Man in the MCU and it making his what's her name? Aunt May, like young, like hot young, like that's how I kind of see Superman's mom. I'm like, she's an older lady, but she's like a hot older lady. You know what I mean? And you would expect parents their age to be a little bit more older, stuff like that. So
and like there's no real problem with it, but you know, they don't look old enough to where I can imagine them being that little like moral compass for them. You know what I mean? His dad dies when he's a teenager, and they still kind of look young. You know what I mean? They don't look like his parents age too well, and then that could totally be just, you know, why waste money on de-aging them or whatever. But you know, I was expecting them to be older. That's it. It works out for the story, because when he does see him in BVS again and stuff like that, the little talk he has and whatnot, it works. But I was just expecting older.
No, yeah, 100%. And do you know what? To be honest, I do believe that when you don't get the appropriate age for somebody to be an older, you know, that older person, I kind of feel like it kind of throws off the movie. And I'm not just saying that because of the MCU Spider-Man, but also with, I think a good way that they did it is in TASM, the Amazing Spider-Man movies, because she was young when she was young, she looked young, but then when they made her old, they made her old. You know what I mean? And I feel like that was a good way to kind of do that. But in Man of Steel, like when she was young, she looked fine, but then even when she was older, she still looked young, just with gray hair. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it kind of throws you off and it makes you feel like, man, you should have like, how can you feel for these older people in that way when you know that they're not older people?
Yeah, they're not as old as I was expecting them to be. And, you know, that could totally be because Clark is still 20 something or whatever. But, you know, like I said, it depends on when they meet him, because I think right when they meet him, they're middle aged, like when they find his shuttle. So they raise a baby maybe by like 35, and then, you know, they hit 40, 50 as he gets older, obviously. But like this one, I can just be like, well, they don't look that old, you know. Martha Kent is defenseless and stuff, but you know, she still looks kind of young. So I mean,
one thing I want to before we get into those controversial takes, and then from those controversial takes, it should take us into the very, I guess, negative stuff that we can probably say of the movie, if you have any. I'm not sure if you do. I want to give praises to one thing in this movie that is immaculate. It's great. It's like one of the better things. And if you watch this movie in your home or in a theater, and you know, you just sit there and watch it and let the music take you, because the soundtrack for this movie is immaculate. Hans Zimmerman, who, you know, does amazing work when it comes to, you know, the background music and all those things. He did an immaculate job with this movie. Superman's first flight, Superman's theme. You know, when you have to walk into a movie and you have to, you know, completely drive the other way from the most iconic Superman theme. You know the iconic one, the yeah. Everybody loves that Superman theme. It's great. It's a great theme, but it is outdated, and I'm not gonna lie, it is. Like I when I see that, even seeing it in Superman Returns was kind of a really moment. You know what I mean? Like, cause when you hear that, you kind of put it with Reeves. You know what I mean? And I know that Superman Returns was supposed to be like a Reeves knockoff or like a Reeves comeback or whatever, but like they put it for that movie, and it was too confusing because it just reminded me of Reeves.
Yeah.
Now this one, when I hear this one, when you hear those drums going, man, I just think Henry Cavill, Superman, Man of Steel, badass motherfucker, like that. Like this soundtrack makes you feel like that.
Yeah, it's so weird. Like scores in movies, we've talked about it countless times, but scores in movies have to set the tone. And if you couldn't have a Superman movie without a powerful soundtrack, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because when it's powerful, he needs to be powerful. Like that first flight, and it's just him. You're taking in the music and him flying, and it, like, even before that, the build up when you hear his father talking, he's like, "They'll join you in the sun" and shit like that. Like, it's such a perfect scene, and he takes off, the music goes, and then the rest is history because the whole soundtrack is just so good.
And a similar scene happens like that too towards the end of the movie when he's destroying the terraforming machine.
Yeah.
Where like he's getting beat down so much and he's trying to win against this machine, and like right there, right when he thought nothing was, nothing he can do is gonna help, like he pinned down trying to get up, he hears the voice of his father, he pushes up, hope blasts through the top of it, he destroys the machine, and the music plays, right?
Yeah.
And that just makes you feel wholesome. It makes you feel good, because that's one thing I didn't understand about this movie, because or at least when people would talk about this movie, that it didn't seem like he had that hope. And I feel like in multiple instances in this movie they had hope,
Of course,
like highlighted in this movie.
yeah.
And more so at the very end, towards the very end of the movie, and I believe around the first time when he's fighting General Zod over there in Smallville and all that. So it's great when a movie can put that score behind it, because now you just don't love the movie, but you love the music that made the movie.
Yeah.
Because it's all about music too. You can't. It'd be very awkward if he was flying and silent, I tell you. So
Yeah.
music makes the movie, and I think Hans Zimmerman did a really great job with this.
Of course he did. And it said
He had no right to go this hard, man.
He was just it's like that meme where the dude's writing with the pen and it's fire on the
just lighting up behind him.
Mhm. He's like, this is too fire.
My boy was in front of the orchestra, like, fucking play, like, goddamn, bro.
His
like
hands
shit.
were just catching fire. It's too hot. But and like talking about that scene about people not seeing the hope in it, they do a really good job setting that up, because while Superman is struggling with one world engine, in Metropolis on the other side of the world, they're going through hell. You know what I mean? The scene where it's like that scene right beforehand where everyone's trapped. Perry decides to wait with his coworker. I forgot her name. And then he's like, I'm not going anywhere. It's me and you. And then the blast radius is getting closer. They're ready to die, And then you get that hope. The music goes, like you said, Superman blasts through. And then what I like after that, because you're like, yes, he did it. But, they established beforehand that he'd be weaker on the machine. So you get that silence. And then, again, you see his hand. You see the sun.
Like him just trying to soak it up.
Yeah, it's colorful. You hear the water. Like, it's such a nice scene.
Yeah. They know when to put the music, and they know when to just let the nature, the noises of nature take over.
Yeah.
And I think they balanced that really well with the soundtrack and the editing of this movie.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and deep dive into these controversial scenes, though, because these are the ones that everybody has contingency with, right?
Yeah.
There's some problems. So let's start with the first one. And the first one is Paul Kent's death scene?
Actually, I think it's before that. I think it starts pretty much after he saves the bus. Also,
People say those things, but the three that I really hear the most is Paul Kent's death scene. I hear, what's that other scene? Obviously the third act with the CGI, and then the next snap. Those are the three. Oh, and maybe if you want to make the second one expand a little bit more and say action altogether, too much action. A lot of people, so there's some people that actually really hate too much action.
it doesn't make any sense.
How
man.
fucking stupid, right? Anyways, so let's start with the first one. Paul Kent,
Okay.
his death scene.
Yeah.
Why wasn't it as impactful to people as why wasn't it impactful to people? Let's start there. They say, why did they say? They say because Superman could have saved him in 2.3 seconds. That why didn't you just send Clark out there to go get the dog instead of you going out there to get the dog? Why just stand there in the tornado when, Superman could have obviously done something. A lot of people say that his death was unnecessary. Now, excuse me. They say it was unnecessary because the way he died was unnecessary because his son's Superman, right? So he should have been able to save him.
Yeah.
Now, I always hear people say, like, I know in Smallville they made his father die of cancer, and a lot of people like to compare him with that one and be like, when you have cancer, that's something Superman can't do. It's out of his reach, so it makes it hard. Was it a heart attack? Okay.
Sorry.
No, you're good. Good. Thank you for correcting me. So a heart attack, that's something that he couldn't stop. And, it's something out of Superman's reach. So, people say that's more impactful. Whereas a tornado, Superman could have done something about it. So where do you think is wrong in that analysis? And do you think that they handled that scene well?
Well, I mean, okay, yeah. If you, like, a heart attack is very, plausible, but at that point you could totally be like, well, why'd you kill him off? To teach Superman that he can't save everybody from natural causes. Okay, but then we do it over here, it's not a heart attack, it's a tornado.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like, people are like, oh, he died pointlessly. No, it was to teach Superman a lesson.
Mm-hmm.
To teach him that the world wasn't ready, and that it reinforces what Paul Kent was telling him all along, that the choice will be yours, but it's not now. Even in my demise, it's not your time. Like, the world isn't ready.
Mm-hmm.
And that reinforces Clark's whole process in the beginning, where he's saving people, and he's just a stranger. When he meets Lois, and then when he talks to her at the cemetery, he's like, the world isn't ready for me, and he's like, that's what my father believed and whatnot. And so
yeah, he literally said, and that's one thing. Sorry to cut you off, but that's one thing that I hate when people say, like, why did he let him die or whatever? But they literally tell you in one of the scenes. They tell you in that graveyard scene where he's like, he literally let him die because he believed what his father believed.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, keep going.
And and that's my thing, because there's some iterations. I think it's in the Justice League show. Both of them are alive.
Oh yeah.
Both of them are alive. Same in the DC animated movie. I don't know if you've seen it. Superman, The Death of Superman.
Oh, they were both alive in that one too?
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
So they show up and he dies, and his parents outlive him basically because he dies by Doomsday.
Mm-hmm.
But what is unnecessary killing? You know what I mean? It's not unnecessary if it teaches the main character, something.
Mm-hmm.
So that goes to the heart attack. He totally could have had him alive, or in this instance, it's reinforcing what his father told him and what he believes in wholeheartedly. And, that's what people aren't grasping when they talk about this scene, because he's trying to show him that, again, in his demise, he's firmly believing that the world isn't ready and it'll be Clark's choice. You know, he totally could have saved him. He totally could have been like, you know what? Fuck that. I'm going for you. I'm saving you. And then they both could have lived happily ever after. Who's to say that's not how that panned out? You know what I mean? But it's for Clark to learn something, and he reinforces it throughout the whole movie.
Yeah.
But people just don't get it.
Yeah, that's one thing that I seen a lot of people say was that they didn't understand why he did that. But there is a scene in there where they tell you why he did that. Now, do I agree with the scene 100%? No, I can't agree with the scene because, in my opinion, there is ways around it that could have been done. And, you know, when I think that's the issue with the scene. And I'll tell you that right now. I think that's the issue. Now, I'm not saying I hated it. I'm not saying that I wish they would have went a different route because I honestly, the way they did it, I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah.
At least for the time, for what Zack Snyder was going for. I do understand people's POV because they could have done something different. They could have, you know, he could have went out there for the dog himself. You know what I mean? Like Jonathan could have just been like, go save the dog real quick, you know? Or, to be honest, let the fucking dog go. Like, you know, you can get another dog if you wanted to. Or, you know, some people were like, oh, Superman could have easily went over there without anybody seeing and came back like in a heartbeat or something. Like, a lot of people like to find these little ways around and stuff. And in my head, Clark Kent was not ready at the time. Superman wasn't even a thing at the time. You know, he is a kid from Kansas who found out he has tremendous powers since he was young and been trying to deal with it ever since.
Yeah.
Trying to deal with that pressure to, you know, I don't know who I am. Why do I have these powers while everybody else around me is, you know, young or, you know, weak and, you know, can't see normal.
Basically.
So the way they set it up was pretty great for this movie, you know, and to put it down as a moral obligation than just him going out there and, you know, doing what he wanted to do. No, he morally wanted to not save him because he thought his father's word was golden, right? Whether you disagree with it or not, that's fine. You don't have to take that at whole value, but you got to understand there's people out there, there's children out there who believe in their father so much that they will, you know, you got who is it, like people that lead certain groups that are chaotic in the name of their fathers and stuff like that, you know, like it happens, those things happen. So I don't think it's too far-fetched to have done that scene, but I do understand how people say that there was ways around it, and that's why they can't wrap their head around it. But if anything comes out of this conversation, I would like to at least put out there that at least people should understand that, you know, this is something that their family believed in. And maybe if he didn't live on a farm on Kansas all the time and was getting bullied by these kids and nobody doing anything about it, maybe he would have a better outlook or a different outlook than just having to take his parents', you know, morals as wholesale value. You know what I mean? Like, it would have been a different story. But the way they set it up for the movie, I think it was a perfect thing. And though you can change it, I wouldn't change it. I'd leave it if that was me.
Well, yeah.
But, but people want to make it controversial for whatever reason.
It's all in service of the story and the characters you're trying to develop. Like, think about the scene where I'm gonna just go full circle and bring up the scene with the bus. Everyone wants to make it seem like Pa Kent was telling him that he should have let them drown. The 12 kids in that little bus. You know what I mean? But when he's like, should I have let them drown? And he's like, maybe. That's not him being like, yeah. It's more of like a, I don't know, I don't have the answers type of shit, because morally, he should have done it, but at the risk of giving himself away.
And that's the problem. That is the problem. That's the moral dilemma.
Exactly.
That is tearing them apart.
Exactly.
Right? Like, do you do what's right, or do you do what's right for you? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That's the thing. Are you doing it for yourself, selfishly? And that's what Pa Kent was doing. Selfishly, he didn't want his son to be out there.
Yes.
Selfishly, he didn't want to see his son get dragged away and be a lab rat because he didn't know how to use his powers and he's just a kid. Mm-hmm. You know, like what is that one movie? it's the Flashpoint, right, where they keep him in a bunker.
Oh yeah, he's in a bunker. He doesn't get sunlight. He's like malnourished.
Yeah, like that, and that's something that his father was trying to keep him from
Exactly.
being put in a bunker and being a lab experiment. So that's where that moral dilemma: are you gonna do things for yourself, or are you gonna do things for other people? And yeah, Pa Kent had that conflict in the beginning, but and when he does say maybe, that's one thing too that like how you brought it up, but he was fighting with his own morals. You know what I mean? Like his morals and his kid.
Exactly.
Like, is it for himself or is it for other people?
Exactly.
You know? And it dragged, and unfortunately that passed down to Clark for a little bit because he was trying to figure that out too.
Mm-hmm.
And by the end of the movie, he figures it out.
Well, yeah, and that's his whole arc and moral dilemma and stuff. And yeah, it caused him to lose his dad, but he came out a better man. You know what I mean? And you kind of see it in BVS. Like I brought it up earlier, the conversation he has with his dad, and he's like, man, I'm proud of you, son, and things like that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so like, it's just a little weird that people like, if you don't agree with it, then okay, that's your thing. But I think people are disagreeing with it for the wrong reasons.
I think this movie is too layered. And I think it's too layered, and a lot of people can't get over the first layer. And I think if people were to peel back a couple layers, then they would see what we mean. But people are too literal sometimes, and people take it face value. And that's something with movies you need to understand, that movies are a director's interpretation. And they interpret things differently, and they're not just some directors don't want to just put it bam in your face. Some directors want you to figure it out so you can come back to the movie and be like, I caught that, like I understand that now, But with that, pocket scene I think is perfect, and I wouldn't have changed it.
No, of course not. No.
Okay, so let's move on to the next controversial thing. Too much CGI, too much action.
Yeah.
All right. And we'll bundle that up with the third act too,
Okay.
just so we can put it all together at one time. We'll talk about the next snap separately, so try not to incorporate that into this part. CGI and fight. Was there too much in this movie?
Honestly, yeah, but it isn't a bad thing to me. I don't think.
Okay.
Like what, I don't know what people want. Like, that's what I'm saying. Do you want him to just talk it out? Is that what the whole movie is about? Him, like the whole first half is him not talking, is just talking it out, hiding, trying to find himself. And then, what is he supposed to do against Zod? Take him out for a tea? Like, hey, bro, I don't think you should be doing this.
Let me tell you why you should not do this.
Like you shouldn't be doing it. You know what I mean? Like, and that's not his first option. The first option was he wanted to go peacefully, but he knew in the end his gut was telling him that he doesn't want peace.
Yeah.
So like, after peace is thrown out the window, what are you supposed to do? And the CGI to me is phenomenal. There's no way hit from Krypton, because Krypton looks beautiful. It looks so good, and you only get like
Rebel Moon.
Yeah, you only get like 10 minutes of it, and then it's gone. You know what I mean? And then a lot of other scenes, like Superman's first flight, that when the ship takes off, and like it just looks so good throughout the whole movie. There's no way that people really complain about that. But as far as the action, I mean, like I said, there's no way you expect anything else, because the first half of the movie is literally him. Not much action. He's saving people, sure, but a lot of it is him just trying to find himself, and it's so weird that people just see the third half and they're like, ugh, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, I don't think it's just the third half, because in the beginning, it's a fight fest too. In the beginning, obviously, I mean, yeah, there's a little bit of here and there, but it's mostly CGI and monsters and Zod trying to get his thing, and eventually being sent to the Phantom Zone. And then next I think what's the next scene that they fight after that? That would be the Smallville scene, right?
Yeah.
That's a gap distance apart.
Yeah, that happens like...
Yeah, exactly. And then right after that, after the Smallville scene, he fights with his moral dilemma, like what I'm gonna have to destroy this ship and destroy everything because he's not gonna leave anything alone. They wound up making a plan, and then boom, that's when we get to the third scene, the third act, where it's all CGI again. But I think you're right. I think though I do think that there is a lot of fighting, I don't see a problem with it. And I don't see a problem with it because I think that in between, with all the conversations and everything, pushes the movie forward to the next thing. See, you don't want a movie that's going to make it sound shitty, all right? I'm not bagging on the movie, but like The Batman had a long length of time, not a lot of action in it. I don't want to see movies like that. And especially in a Superman movie where, you know, in the last Superman movie, Superman Returns, before this one, they said there wasn't enough action. You know what I mean? So now this one is action packed, and people don't like it. I don't see an issue with the action, and even with the third act being mostly all action,
Yeah.
I think it's beautifully done. And I think not only did they put action in there, but they world build it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I think we talked about this when we were doing the rankings a little bit, but they did world building. That, you know, the Wayne Enterprises, LexCorp, the little tidbits here and there, you know, dropping these Easter eggs, and like they didn't. It wasn't just action for me. It was like beautiful scenes. You know, the little dialogue between Michael Shannon and Henry Cavill when they were fighting.
Yeah.
You know, that one scene before they go into it, like when he picks up the dirt and he's like, "Look at this. We could have made a new Krypton in this squalor." That gives me fucking chills thinking about it. In this squalor, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think CGI was bad in this movie. I think it holds up today for
Honestly,
a 2013 movie. Like, I still watch it. I'm like, son of a bitch, Zack Snyder, you done it again, man.
Yeah.
So this movie, though it does have a lot of CGI, I personally don't have an issue with it because I think that this movie does a great thing of storytelling, boom, action.
Yeah.
Storytelling, boom, action. Those impactful pieces of dialogue. I know this one is your favorite too. I just want to bring it up because I think it's great. When he's about to shoot down Lois' ship, he jumps in there. He's about to laser the whole ship, and he goes, "Stop! If you destroy this ship, you destroy Krypton." He's like, he thinks about it. The moral dilemma, right?
Yeah.
Moral dilemma. He didn't know whether or not he wanted to save his people
Yeah.
or save human race.
Exactly.
The bully or the weaker people.
Yeah.
And what is the thing he says? Say it right though.
Krypton had its chance.
And
fucks the shit up.
It does what he needs to do and moves on. And it keeps going. So yes, it's a powerful thing. There's powerful scenes, and though it is action packed, I don't see a problem with it. Me personally, don't see a problem with it.
I don't either. It doesn't make any sense to me that people find it like that.
All right, we're running out of time here, so we're gonna have to hit this last one
Okay.
pretty good. Okay.
On the nail. All right.
The neck snap.
The next.
Should he have snapped Zod's neck?
Yes. I say yes.
He should have curb stomped it.
There's no other way around it. I mean, like I said earlier, people want to be like, "Oh, he should have held him. He should have flown up. He should have done this, and that." And I'm like, well, look. If it wasn't this family, it would have been another family. He makes it very clear before the fight. He's like, "I'm not stopping." It's either, and then middle of the fight, it's either I die or you do. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, it leads to the whole neck snap. People's problem with it is, okay, Superman shouldn't kill. But, you know, that's what you'd expect out of, you know, a Marvel movie, I think. I think by this time, people were just so used to the Marvel formula. They were like, Superman that kills? I don't know. And then, you know, you got Iron Man blasting and shooting people in the face and shit, you know.
My boy literally evaporated Whiplash.
Yeah. So, I mean, like,
he blew up the dude in the third part with one of his suits.
Exactly. So you know, that's a whole nother thing, calling out MCU fans. But, like, there's no other way around it. There was no flying up. There was no holding him. Because how long can you hold somebody before they break out of your grip? He was already starting to do that. And then there's cover his eyes. They established earlier in the film, it still burns. Like when Namek has him and Fiora has him, they established that when he uses his heat vision, it still burns. And they were wearing armor, so imagine his fucking palm. You know, there's no way. There was no way around it.
If it's a Kryptonian versus a Kryptonian, it's equally matched. It's gonna fucking hurt.
Exactly.
I'm sure.
Yeah, like there's no.
They're strong, but it's still gonna hurt.
Yeah, there's no fucking way. You know, and like who knows if he even like burns a hole through his hand. You know what I mean? So like.
If a normal human being punches a normal human being, that shit's gonna hurt, right?
Yeah.
If Superman punches a normal human being, that head's coming right off.
Exactly.
Correct?
Yeah.
So if a superhuman is with another superhuman and they're punching each other, it's equal. It's gonna hurt, but it's not gonna be to the point where somebody's gonna get their head ripped off. It's just gonna hurt a lot.
Yeah.
So with that, the next snap thing, I will go on record and say, I wish they didn't do it. I understand that they did. I wish they didn't, and I'm going to tell you why I wish they didn't. I wish they didn't because Michael Shannon was such a good General Zod. I wish he could have threw him into the Phantom Zone and used him again in a later, like a Man of Steel sequel or something. And I understand that, he wasn't going to stop, but what I would have hoped for was that they could have threw him with Fiora and all that into the Phantom Zone at some point. Make sure that he's beaten, make sure that he knows, like, hey, you're not gonna fuck with this place anymore, and send him off. Me personally, that's just me, what I would have wanted, because I would have loved to see him come back as Zod, and yeah, I know we, in this kind of jump the gun, I know we see him again in BVS, but it's not the same thing. I wish that we would have had him. Now, for the movie and for the story's sake, I think it was a perfect way to do it, because like you said, he wasn't gonna stop. He said it himself. I'm not stopping. This is what's gonna happen. He literally told them throughout the whole fight, this is how it's gonna end. Either you die or I do.
Exactly.
Somebody's gonna die.
Mm-hmm.
If Superman let up in the slightest, you think Zod wouldn't have killed Superman?
Exactly.
You think that don't kiss it. That's what I did too. I be forgetting this is right here. New equipment. He literally said that in the movie, and this is gonna kind of hit in the whole action thing too. When he was like, "Oh yeah, like Zack Snyder only cared about action set pieces or whatever," because when Zod kicked that truck or whatever, and Superman just jumped through the middle and just kind of came out through the other side and let that whole parking structure come down on everybody, that was them saying like, oh well, Superman just let people die. It's his first day as Superman, like literally 24 hours. Like, what do you want him to do? Like don't get me wrong, like yeah, he should have done a little bit more or whatever, but like when you don't know how to do your job, you do what you can and try to make it work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's kind of like what I seen he was doing. Zod was learning this shit quick. Like he was born to do that. Like how he said he was bred.
Yeah.
Superman had to just figure this shit out on his own, and this is the first time that he's ever done battle with anybody.
Exactly.
And now he has to do battle with not just petty robbers or somebody he can easily overpower, with somebody his equal, if not his equal, even harder, because he is a military background.
Exactly.
Superman did his best, and at the end of the day, it was his first time, and he needed to do what he needed to do, and snapping his neck was the only way to ensure people were gonna stay alive.
You brought up the Phantom Zone, and people like to bring it up too, and I'm like, well, look, how does he get? How would he get there? Is my thing. Yeah. If he was part of the ship, because he lasered it in half. The part that falls is I guess his half, the pilot seat, where Zod was. What do you call it? How does he get to the Phantom Zone? If he would have been sucked up with the rest of them, then okay. Movie's over. The dust settles. It is what it is.
Sucked up? Pause.
The Phantom Zone. The Phantom Zone sucking up Kryptonians. But, like, there's no way back at that point. They'd have to figure it out on the fly. But you're not going to do that while they're fighting. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. There's no way around that. I'm like, even Batman, when he was looking at them, he was like, well, you motherfuckers. Like, he had time. You needed time to prepare for them too. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. The Phantom Zone thing, it's just, to me, it doesn't make sense either as a route because there was no way to get there after the ship blows up.
Yeah, and I think the thing is too is like general audiences think like the Phantom Zone is like super easy because, and this comes down all the way back to when Christopher Reeves was doing it, because the way that they were sent into the Phantom Zone, they were literally trapped in a mirror and they threw them out into space.
Yeah.
So I think that's what people were kind of expecting to happen again, like kind of like a callback. And I think that a lot of people were let down because of that issue. And so obviously we cannot do that, and they're not gonna, they're not gonna repeat history and do that shit again because you got to do a fresh take on it. But honestly, I think this movie was handled very well. I think even down to the neck snap, it made perfect sense. Narratively speaking, it made perfect sense. Now, if you want to say, well, he could have done this, well, you could always say he could have, but for the movie, narratively speaking, this is what had to happen.
And like
to save people.
Exactly. People want to be like, oh, he could have done this. He could have done that. Okay, and Iron Man could have died in the tunnel. Shit, the shrapnel could have hit his heart already. Fucking Batman could have. The thug could have shot Batman too. You know what I mean? Like so, like saying what if in movies is so lazy and out of universe, because you totally, because that was my big thing when I talked about this on Twitter. People were like, oh, it's just the writers, this is that. Now, okay, you established outside of the universe that that the writers decided this. Tell me in universe. Mm-hmm. Theoretically speaking, we're in the DC universe, and we're like, there's no other way around that. Superman should snap that motherfucker's neck. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But people just want to be like, oh, the writers could have changed it. And I'm like, well, that's fucking lazy. You know what I mean? Like,
it's easy to say what if. What if? But it is what it is. And this movie, honestly, elevated the superhero genre. It elevated Superman as a character. And with the dawn of the new DCU that's going to be happening pretty soon, and we're going to be getting a new Superman movie. Like I said, when we did our old pod, if you guys want to go check that one out, that there's some big shoes to fill with this movie.
For sure.
Yeah, and I hope that we get another iteration that's great like this movie. But with that being said, let's go ahead and wrap it up. Josh, give me a number, and from 1 to 10, what would you rate this movie?
Well, if you want, it hasn't changed since we did the DCU ranking last time, or DCEU ranking. That's one of our episodes too, if you guys want to check it out. But it's still a 10.
10? Solid?
Characters, score, themes, like you said, the layers in this movie are just so complex. I love it so much. 10. It's 10.
Yeah, you're right. We did give it a ranking before, like a rating. I got to give it, I still give it that 9. That 9. I think there is room for improvement, and I think that there is, and I think as we go down these reviews and, review each one of these DCU movies separately instead of as a whole.
Yeah.
Separately as its own movie, I got to give it a 9 because it does what it needs to do.
Yeah.
It conveys the message, shows you that moral struggle. The action was great. It, like I said, if you were starving for action when you were watching Superman Returns, this movie quenched that.
It does
and even quenched it for the next movie that you probably watched too. But I gotta say, with those little things, like I said, Perry White, Lawrence Fishburne, not really, kind of being a miss for me on that part. Even though I love him, I fucking love Morpheus, bro. But regardless of anything, like just those little nitpicks and everything. And I will say right now, the soundtrack gives it 3 points off bat. Hans Zimmer, like his soundtrack gives it 3 points off bat. Henry Cavill being Superman gives it, I would give it 1,000,000 points for Henry Cavill being Superman, but it's a great portrayal, and this is Superman.
Yeah,
this is a Superman movie. So if you guys haven't seen it, Man of Steel, it's out already. 2013, the kickoff of the DCEU. Like I said, we are going to start this new little segment, and we're gonna just go down every single movie one by one, leading up to James Gunn's new DCU, and we will be comparing those movies later on when they come out. We'll see what happens with that. But Josh, let them know one more time where they can find us and where they can talk to us and where they can holler at us and support. And let's wrap it up.
If you want to hit us up anytime, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram at FilmBros Podcast. We could use your guys' help. We could tell us about movies and, news you want us to cover. If you want to listen to our other podcasts while you're out and about, Spotify and Apple Podcasts at FilmBros Podcast. If you want to support us in a big way, you can head to Zippy Stream at FilmBros Podcast. All it takes is a name, an email, and then you get access to our full catalog. You get reminders when new episodes drop. And if you really wanted to, you could email us and hit us up directly to, review a movie or talk about certain news. It's up to y'all. If you have time for our YouTube, sit with us for an hour or so at FilmBros Podcast on YouTube. Yeah,
and we will be putting out more YouTube videos. Just letting you guys know soon. One more time. This is a podcast exclusive, so go ahead and listen to us on there. If there's any movies that you guys want us to review, anything that you guys want us to talk about, go ahead and hit us up where my co-host lets you guys know.
Exactly.
And we will talk to you guys on the next one.
Talk to you guys later.